JT Crowley is Talking Books. On the show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world.
Hello, I'm JT Crowley, and I'm extremely pleased to have on the show today Don Best, the author of the River Wild series. This series is a duology with the first book, The Gravedigger's Dream, promptly followed by the third, Promise, the second book. To get the full effect of this incredible story, you do need to read both books, everybody, in sequence. For reading them without sequence, you're not going to enjoy them. Don Best has published hundreds of newspaper and magazine stories, including feature articles in Popular Scenes, Homeowner, This Old House. And he's also, been writing for a long time, everybody. And when we look at his, his publishings, particularly, around the TV show, The Old House, that's quite phenomenal. But also, he did publish in 2009, Moonlight on the Amazon, a compendium of true stories, essays based on his time he spent in the Brazilian Amazon. From old New England to the Amazonian rainforest, Don Best has worked as an award-winning journalist, expat novelist, and Christian missionary. He met his wife, Elizabeth, simply known as Betty, in Rio de Janeiro, while they worked as a journalistic photographic team. They ended up marrying, traveling the world, devoting their lives to each other and to their Christian missionary work. They have two grown-up sons, Paul and Jonathan, who have their own families, and they presently live near Charleston in South Carolina in the United States of America. Everything that Don has done has not been done without the backing and the full support of his wife, Betty. Betty has been very instrumental in the River Wild series. So that's why, everybody, they're both on the podcast today. Despite only Don's name appearing on the books as the author, let me tell you, Betty has had a huge influence on these books, everybody. As they say, behind every successful man is a successful woman, and vice versa. So let's invite them on the show to tell us how and why this intriguing River Wild series came about. Don, Betty, come and join me on the show.
Hey, John. Good to join you. How are you? Doing good?
I'm great. Betty?
Hey, John. It's good to be here. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're very welcome. I want to get to the hub of this series, and I want to go to the first book. So, Don, Betty, I think it's only right that we start off by talking about the first book, The Gravedigger's Dream. Where did the idea and concept come from? Don, does this book stem from your father's ideology that as a child you should venture into the wild?
Well, let's give credit where credit's due. My father believed in getting my brother and my sister and I out into the world and experiencing real adventure. And he wildly succeeded with me. I traveled a lot and ended up spending about 15 years altogether in Latin America, John. Puerto Rico and Paraguay, and a lot of years in Brazil, 10 years in Brazil. So yeah, the inspiration did come from those direct experiences in Latin America. We've actually had a long love affair with Latin America. We met in Rio de Janeiro, working as a journalism team.
That was back in the 70s. That was Brazil Part 1. We had a Brazil Part 1 and a Brazil Part 2.
Right.
Opposite ends of Brazil. We were very different too.
Very different experiences, John. The first one was very cosmopolitan, living in Rio, and the second one was very rural, living in the Brazilian Amazon in the rainforest. We lived there for 10 years.
Was that Manaus?
Yeah.
Not Manaus, but we were about six. We were in Santarém, which is where the Tapajós River meets the Amazon River, right at that place. Tapajós being bigger than the Mississippi, but dwarfed by the Amazon. And Santarém was a city of 200,000, but it was the largest city within 600 miles. Manaus being on the west and Belém being on the east at the coast. So we traveled with teams. We were at a mission. We traveled with teams to probably about 70, 80, 100, I don't know, different river villages, repeating some of them. So we get to know the people there pretty well. It was pretty exciting.
The book, Don, has 24 chapters, and I want to go to chapters 1 and 2 so that listeners get a flavor of the opening scenes in this book. You introduce, two of the main characters here, Zamario and Mick. I like the character Mick, the Irish missionary.
Yes.
But I'll tell you why later on, everybody. And Zamario, of course, is this sergeant in the military police who struggles with alcohol addiction, and Mick, as I said, the Irish missionary. You start off with a bank robbery, which Zamario finds himself embroiled in. His grandmother's and the story of the moon, I thought was very interesting, that little clip's there. He's, figuratively speaking, been demoted by his boss, Colonel Mateus Iquizera. But here you are, you're sowing the seeds of a revolutionary here. What's happening in this book? A revolutionary uprising to overthrow the present dictator president. Why did you choose to open the story to this duology, 2 novel books with these characters and scenes? And why do you feel this opening chapter, which is powerful in its own right, is engaging to readers? Why this storyline?
Well, I really want to take the readers on a trip, an adventure where very few people will ever go. And I wanted to set that scene. So twice in my life, John, I've lived under dictators. And in the 70s, we mentioned when we were there, when we met, we were living under a dictator, Ernesto Geisel. And he was brutal. And so I wanted to set that scene, first of all, that this is a very rural place on the edge of the world, out in the rainforest. The name of the village is Jacaré, which means alligator, actually, in Guarani. And I wanted to set that scene of just what a rough place this is, and that they're living under the thumb of a dictator, and they're living in a village. I wanted to set it the way we lived it, the way we saw it, which is a village that has no electricity. It has no indoor plumbing. It has no roads. Everything is related to the river. And to bring those characters together in that setting and give it that flavor. I really do want to, I set out to take the readers to, like I said, a place that very few people ever go, a time and a place. And I want to make that clear, the setting, really. Also, pretty immediately in the book, to bring in the glory. Actually, glory is the right word, the rainforest. What an extraordinary place. So those 3 things, I think the overarching political scene, which is dictatorship, local corruption, and then the rural setting of the village, and then this set in this incredible place called the Amazon rainforest.
Yes, I understand it. And when I look at the book, I can see the poverty that's within that village. It's very basic.
Right. One of the conditions that Zé, his full name is Zamario, but that's shortened to Zé in the book, which is the way Brazilians do. Brazilians shorten your names from Zamario Lacata down to just Zé. He is extremely poor, and he is after he's booted out of the military, is the village gravedigger. And there's not much room to dream there. There's not much hope. At one point in the early goings of the book, your character there, Mick, says, your problem is not poverty, and your problem is not disease, and it's not even actually the dictator. Your problem is hopelessness.
It is, and I get that very strongly in the book.
Yeah, right.
Don, we can't go, but we can't go into every chapter of the book, because that's not the whole purpose of this podcast. The idea of the podcast is to give people a flavor of these 2 books.
Right.
So, I would like to go to chapter 13 because I like this chapter. So this is chapter 13 in the first book.
Right.
And for a couple of reasons. I enjoyed it, and more significantly, we start to see more of a scenario known as Z, motive, dreams. And we also get to see more of Alzira. Now, Alzira is the village witch. She's powerful, isn't she? She's a powerful sorcerer. And she's got some not so nice characteristics attached to her, but she has her use. So we start to see the demise of Evander Bonham. Now, Evander Bonham, everybody, is the educational minister who they target because of his corruption. He spent the money on himself as opposed to the schools, and this is what the story is about. C is very angry here. Where did you get this story from? Where did you come up with these characters? Why the sorcerer? Why Z? Why the education minister?
So again, to be honest, is a writer's, to me, to be honest, is a writer's foremost responsibility, and to bring this world authentically to the reader, to really take them there. So this idea, this book is not fantasy. This idea of witchcraft is very, very deeply embedded in the Amazon and all of Brazil, actually. They have two strains of black magic or witchery, if you will, macumba and candomblé. These are very real presence. This is a very real presence in village life. So Alzira is not a figment of my imagination at all. And so she's a very real character. And they do believe in selling baths and potions and casting spells. So that's not made up stuff. And neither is the corruption. You mentioned the corruption at the ministerial level, where in Brazil they say he ate the money, comeu la comida, right?
Comeu dinheiro.
He ate the money. And this also is very, very authentic and realistic. I want the readers to come away from this understanding. Corruption is rife in Brazil. It's very, very common for a bureaucrat or a minister to eat the money for the project. And so those two factors are very real, and crushes Zay's hope for a school because the money's gone.
Because Zay and Chico actually went to see the minister, and he threw them
did.
down the stairs, didn't he? Well, he threw Chico down the stairs.
Yes, he did. He tried. So in his dream, in his struggle to realize this dream, which is for a better life for his village, he tries what you might call the straight route, the legitimate course. Let's go all the way to Belém, which is 600 miles by river, with Chico, his friend, right?
Which is slow.
It's a slow, hard trip down that river, I will tell you, because we've been there. Again,
3.5 days there.
I just want to let our readers know that we've been on that river, and I've been all the way from Manaus to Belém. It's like 1,200 miles on a slow boat. Anyway, he does take he says, I'm going to give this legitimate try, and they treat him like dirt, and they throw Chico out down the stairs, and that plants the seed for bitterness, because a hope deferred turns bitter in a man's heart or a woman's heart, right, Betsy?
Yeah. I think the clincher was because he really loved Chico, and the clincher that just threw him overboard was when Chico was thrown down the stairs. Yeah. That was just sealed his bitterness.
Hurt me, if you will, but don't hurt my friend, and probably his best friend in the village. And
I chose the chapter 13 because this is the turning point in the two books, because this is when the revenge starts. This is Z's revenge, and how he comes about delivering this revenge to get his dream of, he's the simple gravedigger of the village, but he has a dream. He wants to see the school. He wants to see the village prosper. But this chapter was a turning point for me. So I thought I'm going to bring it in. But I want to go to, as we said, Don, in our pre-chats, we'll go to chapter 24 here, because the whole aspect of this podcast is to give a flavor of the books. So let's go to chapter 24. Now, chapter 24 is the end chapter in this book, but it's a significant chapter, everybody, because, the dream is here. It's starting. It's a stunning chapter. Zamario is in vellum with Letero. He's a character, and I'm not going to go into his character because he really is a character, everybody. To carry out the curse, because the curse was set by Alzira the witch. I want you, Don, to tell us how you put this chapter 24 together now. And did you enjoy writing it? Did you enjoy writing this book?
That's a really beautiful question, John. So
That's why
I love writing, first of all. So is it always quite pleasant? Sometimes it's more like a struggle, but underneath, I love writing. I love the language. This chapter is challenging. It does deal with something that's supernatural, which is so when a man's dream is deferred or turned to ashes, he becomes bitter. And like I say, this is a very real thing in Brazil. If you are angry, or you are your lover and you've been spurned, or you will turn to many people.
Many people, yeah.
Will turn to witchcraft, to have a curse placed on them. Yeah.
For that, and because they want somebody to fall in love with them, there's all kinds of little potions for every specific thing in your life.
Potions and baths and sacrifices. I want to again tell those who are going to buy the book, and the two books, I hope, and read them in sequence, like you said. This is a very real thing, John. And the traffic circles, even in the big cities, out in the villages, is very common to go to the local curandeira, they sometimes call them, or herbalist, but healer, they will say, use different names, but they're just euphemisms for the witch. They will go to her, and they will do,
or him.
It could be
him, yeah,
or him, could be, and pay in one way or another, pay for a curse. And this, in one way or another, involves money and also usually some sort of sacrifice. I don't want to spoil this chapter for the reader, but let me just say that in Rio, where we lived for 2 years, and in Sao Paulo, the other big cities, you will come to a traffic circle. And out in the middle of the traffic circle, there will be a sacrificial altar placed. I mean, right in the middle of a little park, this traffic circle. And it will have candles, and it'll have a plate, and maybe other things, a cigar, maybe a shot of whiskey.
Yeah, or a wine glass, a very nice wine. This is set up often by a person who has no money, but they will put out beautiful dinnerware and beautiful wine and so forth as a sacrifice. And
the police will not touch it, John. No one will touch it. I mean, you would think, well, in the United States or maybe in Great Britain or Europe, the police would remove it, and that is left there. It is, no one will touch that. It is a sacrificial altar, and that
it's bad luck to move it.
And so again, I wrote this right out of the reality that is Brazil, was the reality in Brazil in the 1970s, and also still the reality today, John. So yeah, I want to take the reader to a place, like I was saying, where a time and place where they've never been, and show them some really interesting things.
Because I thought it was odd, that in this chapter, they are on the side of the road, and they're doing this offering, to bring this curse about. And of course, it's the wind chimes, and I'm not going any further there, guys. If you want to know what the wind chimes are about, read the books. But for me, I thought towards the end of this book, you left a lot of loose ends floating about. And no doubt that was quite intentional, wasn't it, Don? So that people then go on to the second book, the third promise, which we're about to go on to. I'm right, aren't I?
You are right.
Well, I think we need to say that the book was originally one book, and the publisher said it's just too big. You have to divide it into.
It was over 500 pages. So my publisher, Rowena Coquo with Brimstone Fiction, and more power to her. She is a beautiful lady, and a real inspiration. Said we need to, for portability's sake and for readability, and we need to split this into 2 volumes. So we have the Rivers Wild series 1 and 2, and so they are continuous or continuous.
Oh, they are. They are.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, she did wisely suggest that Don write a new introductory chapter to the third promise, to the second part of it, to catch people up. So you can read the third promise by itself, but you'll miss a lot of the heart of what we're trying to get across.
Let me tell you, everybody, you need to read both books. You're not really going to get the whole story without reading the 2 books in sequel. I've done it, believe you me. So let's go to the second book, The Third Promise. For me, this book is more intense as it gets further into the nitty-gritty of the story. We get to learn more about the complexities of the characters Zemario, Alzira, and Mick. Now, Mick really does come into this second book here, The Irish Missionary. And of course, Raphael, his adopted son. So let's have a look let's go to chapters 2 and 4 here. Here we have a chess game between Padre Ezebra, and if I've got that wrong, I do apologize. He's the Catholic priest, and Mick O'Hanlon, the Irish missionary. We get to see more about Z's depression as life for him has fallen apart as he spirals further into Alzira's spider's web of trickery. And now she's got a grip on him for the money that he owes her money for doing these curses. As she says, they pay these people, and some of them aren't very rich people. So for me, this book is very intense. The scenes are starting to build up. And I love the character Chico. Did you enjoy writing this second book, this third promise? And starting off the storylines with what you say in chapters 2 and 4. You tell us what's in chapter 2 and 4. I know, but I want you to tell me.
So 2 is, you might say, like a defeated soldier going back home from actually to lay down a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice to the devil. Is fundamentally depressing and fundamentally evil, and so he's taken himself. One of the overall themes we use to describe this series is what happens when a noble dream turns into a deadly obsession. So he's starting to really mess with death now because his dreams turn bitter, and so we see him coming back to his village, really a defeated man, and then the chess game you described, I really had fun with that because I played chess to start with.
I thought so.
And so I'll go back really quickly here and just tell you I lived 2 years in Paraguay when I was in the Peace Corps. And I indeed played chess there in the village with a blue-eyed, chubby priest of German descent. And one of the more intellectual characters, and that was in Caazapá in Paraguay, another village with no electricity or plumbing and so forth. But so I lived poor there. So that character, more than any other, I think is the only character in the book that is closely cast, I would say, after someone I knew. And the chess game itself is metaphorical. It's so one of the other things that's realistically, authentically going on in Brazil is a clash between Catholicism and the Protestant churches, especially evangelical Protestant churches. That is, there's no way to prettify that. That is a clash between those 2 religions. So that chess game is both very real. It's very real again. I think, again, as I said, John, my number 1 responsibility as a writer is to be honest as I can. So that's the reason for that scene. I like that scene very much, actually. I'm not going to spoil it by telling you who wins the chess game, or where that friction between the village priest and an Irish missionary, how that plays out.
And I'm not going to tell you who wins the chess game either, folks. Can we go to chapter 13, Don, please? Now, I love this chapter. There's something about chapter 13 in your books. It's about Alzira's stranglehold over Z with Raphael under her control. It's very interesting. You know, she's got his adopted son, his son there working for her. She's got a stranglehold over Z. Now, a child to be used as employment, as a, you know, for payment of a debt. This is a very interesting aspect and a very interesting storyline. So I take it you saw a fair bit of that on your explorations, you know, your missionary work. So I think you based this on what you saw. Am I right?
Well, I think honestly, almost everything in that book is based on things I directly saw or experienced, or we experienced together. It's taken right out of life, right out of the life of the rainforest, and right out of the life of the Brazilians who live there. So, what is I came up with the word indentured. I'm not sure I ever. Maybe I did use it in the book once. So there's slavery, and then there is indentured people who are indentured because of debt, and he finds himself, as you say, sinking into this. He's in deep debt to her and under her spiritual sway, and then she's not satisfied with that. What she's really after is his son Raphael, who is a gifted, really gifted young guy, and she's not so interested in the old man. She does. He's useful maybe in some ways, but she wants to get her hooks or claws into his son. And so here we see again the dream deferred, or the dream turned bitter, leading to real evil, real trouble, real suffering.
When I look at your book, there's some parts of this book, you know, the Third Promise, are quite violent. You know, when I go to chapter 15, you know, you've got the brawl, the attack on Mick, the Irish missionary.
Right. So again, that is, we know people who were stoned in the Amazon. It's a very I'm a Christian. There are some Christian themes in the book, but this is not an overtly Christian book. It is more than anything meant to be an honest depiction or portrayal of life in the Amazon. And it is it's a very beautiful and dangerous place. And it's sometimes very violent. We know of people who have been stoned, actually. It's kind of a very crude medieval, actually pre-medieval way to express your anger towards someone, to throw rocks at them. But again, I want my readers to know that I'm not making this up.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember is that we're all like that. These are people that are just like us, that are enclosed in an isolated river village, so that and it's filled with gossip. So the tempers can run deep if they start to run. It's like a match hitting dry leaves. Not to indicate that the people are always, you know, they're just violent people. But all of us will have that tendency if we're closed in close with an issue that has been blown out of proportion.
Especially, you see, of course, has
a few lies thrown in.
Some lies and gossip swirling in this sea of lies and gossip. And alcohol, of course, is a kind, a contributing spirit. They call alcohol spirits, don't they? And so, and he sees now his son compromised or indentured. And so, Brazilians, I will say this, but we love Brazilians. We've had a long love affair with Brazilians. They are by temperament actually very mellow people.
Absolutely.
Let's give them, and they're also very generous. Let's say some really beautiful things about the Brazilians. They're very generous people and laughing people and very musical people. Welcoming people. Yeah. But this book has universal themes, and that we all want to see our sons and daughters be healthy and grow up and realize their potential, and that is fundamentally his dream for his son Raphael. And when you see that crater or go to ashes, It brings out, even in a Brazilian, um, some real anger, and they will, like any other human being anyway, they will become violent, right?
And anger is often focused on the newest comer, the newcomer. And
Right.
that's the source of all our, or this other person is the source of all our problems.
Isn't that very human, John?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, the newcomer is Mick, isn't it?
He is.
Right.
He happens to be.
Now, he's a fascinating character, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because when I look at the books, everybody, the historical background of Mick O'Hanlon is fascinating. His journey from being involved in the paramilitary organizations in Northern Ireland and his transgression to be a missionary in Brazil. It's a phenomenal storyline. Why did you put him in? Why did you give him that character, those characteristics? Because I love the character Mick.
Yeah, I like him too. And I like him very much. Actually, I have some Irish heritage myself, and we got the chance to visit Ireland. We'd love to go back. We went to Belfast, John, and we we met a wonderful Irishman there who said, "I'm going to give you the warts and all tour." And by the time, yeah, warts and all about Northern Ireland. And by the time I explained to him, I never quite understood the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And he said, well, by the time we're through here and walk around Belfast, you'll understand the Troubles, at least more so. So I think it's very interesting. The Mick went from, okay, let's just look at Northern Ireland for a minute, rock throwing or maybe Molotov cocktails, and the violence in Northern Ireland, to some violence that erupts in a small village in the Amazon. He goes there meaning well, and doesn't always pull it off. Let's say he has certainly has some character problems of his own.
I mean, let's talk about. I mean, he pays off these debts, but
yeah, I don't want to go too far down that road.
There are strings attached here, and there are some promises, aren't there? And that's why the book is called, as it is, the third promise, because there are promises here. Do you want to briefly skirt around this issue here?
I do want to skirt around
too much away.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil the book by telling too much. I think if you're interested in going someplace, like I say, where you've never been before, seeing some things that are authentically drawn, this would be a great book, a great Christmas gift. Maybe I would encourage people to get it as a 2-volume gift, let's say, for their friends. But
2 volumes, 2 volumes,
wrapped in a ribbon, maybe. Did you want to add something? I wanted to say something about flavor.
Go on,
you've touched that word twice, and I want to give credit to this beautiful woman here. So it's challenging to draw this book in an authentic way in a culture that is not my native culture. I'm an American, and I know that culture pretty well, but still, it's audacious. It's ambitious. So the reader will find some bits of Portuguese, for example, in the book, because their native language is Portuguese. And she is very fluent, or we both speak Portuguese and Spanish, but so you ask about her contribution. She went through and for example, let's give you a quick example. Mick has to learn Portuguese to be effective in the village. And to go from English to Portuguese is a very difficult uphill struggle to learn the language. Betty and I both went up that hill and to learn foreign languages. And so to get that climb right in that character, where he starts out being very, very clumsy with the language, and then attaining some ability in the language, some fluency as he goes along. That's really where she helped me round these characters out and get those things correctly. Yeah.
The real trick is that, of course, they're speaking English all this time.
They are.
So he has to make mistakes that would be credible for Portuguese, but his English is messed up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I do.
Because no one would know that his Portuguese is messed up. The same way with Zé, because he's a backwoods guy. He's not super educated. And his Portuguese needs to not sound like equivalent to Queen of England's English. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we had to make it in English sound a little backwoods without sounding like he came from Appalachia. He needs to sound like a Brazilian fisherman, you know,
Right.
but express himself with that kind of color.
But I think you did that very well.
Yeah, she did real magic there, John. She did real magic with helping with those cultural fine touches in the glossary. And the trick always for a writer is the way people speak, because everybody speaks differently. You know, are you an ex-soldier, a real rural guy in the Amazon, or are you an Irish a missionary, or to get that dialogue, that conversational right, according to character, you know. So yeah, that's.
Oh, I do, and especially when we come to the end of the Third Promise book, you know, we have seen a dramatic change of Z's character from where he started off, right in the Gravedigger's dreams, you know, a soldier, a sergeant in the military police. And it's like he's had an apparition to become a totally different person towards the end of the Third Promise, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is his change through the struggle and through actually making a lot of mistakes. And I believe people can change. And I believe one of the ways, maybe more often than not, John, we change because of failure and because of trouble. And I don't know, it seems like.
Now, Z had a lot of failures.
Yes, he did. Has a lot of failure. And I think, again, there's a universal theme there besides him so desperately wanting a better life for his family and his village and fighting for that. I think the other universal theme there is that one, that we fail.
Sure.
We fail. And we're human. And though, whether you're Irish or English or American or Australian or whatever your language, wherever you live, I think you'll recognize that struggle. And his dream is good. His dream is, it is a beautiful, it is a noble dream.
His dream is good, everybody.
But yeah.
I mean, even, you know, I want to go to yourself, Betty. You know, I get the sense that when I looked at these books, that you brought a woman's touch to these books, particularly around some of the female characters. Of course, the one character we've not talked about here is Anna, his wife.
Right, right.
Did you have an influence here, Betty? Is this you at work here? Is this you, the successful woman, being behind this successful author?
Well, I don't know. I think with Anna, yeah, in little ways with Anna to express how she would feel. I mean, her husband is a wife beater and an alcoholic, but she loves him. And she's also tremendously dependent on him. This is a small village. This is her lot in life. There's not really a whole lot of escape for her. She's had many miscarriages. She's had a hard life. And perhaps in a few hints, you know, I'm always his first reader on these things, so I can't remember exactly. He worked on this for 10 years. So I can't remember exact things with Anna. I know I had some things to say about Mick to make him a little more rounded, not too perfect. And then, and also I think just around the background was encouraging him when the publisher suggested that he cut it in half. He was ready to quit. He cut my baby in half.
Yeah.
So I helped him to see that it could be done.
And did you get support from others, Betty?
I'm sorry?
Did you get support from other people?
Yeah, we did. Well, from Brazilian friends to make sure that we had the slang particularly correct and any kind of cultural things. We had to change Anna's name from something else that apparently had a second meaning. So,
yeah, our original name was Pomba, which means pigeon or dove in Portuguese.
But it also means something else.
It also means so you have to be careful. It has a double meaning. That's
absolutely
not so nice.
Right.
And so our friend Regina Everly, a Brazilian, read this book for me and read an earlier draft, and she's just wonderful. She caught those kinds of cultural things Even though we had lived in Brazil for probably 12 years, 14 years altogether, those things can escape you because
you're never a native. You're
really
never
quite a
native.
native. So they're deeply embedded in the language. And so we had help from Agina.
She put the finishing touches on, didn't she?
She fixed a few things that had directly to do with Brazilian culture or language, and others too. Lucy Van and Claire and so forth. We had others look at it too.
We also had an Irish group, a helpful Irish group, read the book to see where I'd missed nuances, some nuances in the way Mick, coming out of the Troubles, Mick is as a character. And actually, there's a one word of Gaelic in the book, you may remember.
And we'll leave it there because everybody, if you want to see what that word is, go and read the books. Betty, I want to come to you. I believe the primary responsible for putting the character name, the key sections together, as well as the Portuguese glossary, the phrases section at the end of each book. Did you enjoy working with Don on these books? And would you agree that the books were inspired by 10 years of laughter, tears, and lessons hard won in the heart of the Brazilian rainforest?
Absolutely. I fell in love with Brazil when I was 17 years old, had a Brazilian exchange student in my house. And I just love working with Portuguese. That's what I do now. I'm an interpreter and translator, Portuguese, English. And I just loved making the glossary. I love making Brazil more reachable by others. I love translating poetry and songs from Portuguese into English so people can get what's there. So yeah, I very much enjoyed doing a glossary. I got a bit finicky about it. So I did my very, very best to reflect pronunciation in ways that people would understand. You can't really do that in print. There's an sound that doesn't exist.
Can't do it. No, I get that.
And but it was the book was the result of relationships in Brazil and laughing, crying, so forth with the people there. They're beautiful people. We made some very close friends, and they're so welcoming. They would when we left the village, they would give us handmade gifts, and it was just sweet.
Oh, you can't help but think, when you look at the two books together, this is at the heart of Brazil, and this is the love that you two had for Brazil. Now, I believe you want to read a little caption of the first book, Gravediggers. Do you want to read it very briefly for us?
We do want to read that. It's not very long. I want to give a little bit of context.
Sure.
Because it encapsulates where the name of the book came from. So in the early part of the book, Zay is in the military police. It's where he learns how to read and write, by the way. But he is disgraced. There's a bank robbery, and he's disgraced. His squad fails to defend the bank. So he's disgraced. And getting ready to be actually ushered out of the military when his colonel calls him in, and his colonel actually invites him to a party where he feels he doesn't understand yet the colonel's ulterior motives, which have to do with the revolution. He's called to the colonel's daughter's birthday party.
Daughter's birthday party,
and
indeed.
He is so fish out of water. He is just completely out of his element with these officers and other people. And it's there that he meets Esmeralda, who is the colonel's daughter. And this is where his life changes.
Okay, let's go.
Then, as from a dream, Esmeralda appeared, the birthday girl, imparting a vision of excellence that has haunted me ever since. Though only 10, she was already a perfect flower, blooming with health, intelligence, and charm. She smiled with straight white teeth and showed off her dimples on fine rosy cheeks. She moved around the room in her violet petticoats like a fairy princess, introducing herself with politeness and poise. I tried for half a moment to place her on the island with our barefoot boys and dull-eyed girls, and found the stretch too painful. Suddenly, the princess was standing right before me. With a smile A curtsy and a single word, she delighted me. Encantada, then moved quickly on, little knowing or caring how much damage she'd done. Later, under the doting eyes of her father, Esmeralda recited a long, enchanting poem, easy as you please, then moved to the piano and played us a waltz. As the last note sounded and the applause died away, the colonel proudly announced that his daughter was studying algebra and English. I didn't know what algebra was, still don't really, but I do know this. Esmeralda was so wonderfully different from the ragged pot-bellied kids in Jacare that she seemed a different species altogether. So came my first real glimpse of excellence, and with it, a world of discontent and trouble.
There you go, everybody. That gives you just a flavor of how well constructed these two books really are. Don, Betty, where do you see the market for your books? And more importantly, who would you like to see reading your books?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Everyone. I think if you like, I think if you love fiction, and you want to, as I mentioned a couple of times before, if you want to go to a time and place, very few people can go into the places we went and where we lived and meet this extraordinary cast of characters.
And get to know them. I mean, there are eco tours and so forth where people are taken to villages that are authentic villages where they see a different tourist every day. But to really understand and really know a culture that you really are not probably going to get a chance to know, that reflects a lot about ourselves. When you strip away all the cultural norms and so forth that we're quite used to, and just get down to the human beings. I think this teaches us a lot, not only about Amazonian culture, small river village culture, but about ourselves and some of our own foibles.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. Don, where can people get your books from?
Well, it's on Amazon. It's on my own website at donbestauthor.com. It's on the publisher's website. That's brimstonefiction.com. And we're hoping to get it into Barnes & Noble. The second book is actually just out. It's hot off the press, so we're still in the process of getting it into some of the bookstores, Barnes & Noble. And hope that is not yet, but right now it's on Amazon.com. Both the books are on Amazon.com and both on my website, Don Best Author. I do want to just say an excited word about the trailer and give this lady again. I think you're going to
the trailer, everybody, is in the written introduction. You can click the link and you can watch it. I've put it on the written introduction, everybody. It's fantastic.
So just to give this lady again her due credit. So that trailer is full of images, photography, excellent photography and video that she took, because she's very modest. She's a great photographer. And so she took hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures while we were in the Amazon. And so that trailer, which is 90 seconds, those images are all, most, if not all, hers.
I love the music to it, Betty. I love the music you put towards it. So, anyway, Don and Betty, thank you so much for coming on the show. Don and Betty, best.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you
really
much.
Appreciate it.
I'm JT Crowley. Thanks for listening, watching, wherever you are in the world. So until next time, stay safe.